Welcome everyone to Raw Sport. Episode 56 is upon us. My name is Ahmed Al-Houli, and once again, Mr. Tony Shin joins me for another cracker of a show. Tony, what's happening, mate?
Plenty is happening, Ahmed, and we look forward to another massive guest who has some fantastic news for us coming up.
Absolutely. Today, our lineup of awesome guests and very special guests continues. The man himself, who's had a great victory over the weekend, a historical Australian moment, Mr. Alfie Di Carlo. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey,
how are you?
I'm well. Yourselves?
Very good, mate.
That's good.
Absolutely, mate. Before we get into the show, we just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor. Without them, this show doesn't happen, and we'll just go to a quick little break.
Yep.
Now, Alfie, we know you're in Queensland and you want to upgrade to electric Houdini plumbing systems. So if you want to ditch your old gas hot water unit and switch to an energy-efficient heat pump, you can save on bills, reduce your carbon footprint, and enjoy reliable hot water. So why choose Houdini Plumbing, Alfie? Because it's energy efficient and up to 70% less energy. It's also eco-friendly with lower emissions, and best of all, it's a cost savings bonanza which can slash your bills. We have expert installation and a completely professional service. So for all your plumbing needs, call Houdini Plumbing on Melbourne, which is 03 9917 5458, or Alfie, for you and your Queenslanders, jump online and it's Houdini Plumbing, HOUDINI plumbing.com.au to upgrade today.
Thank you, Tony, and a huge thank you to our sponsors, Houdini Plumbing. Now,
let's get stuck into the real stuff, Ahmed.
Into the action. Here we go. Alfie Di Carlo, you and Liam Paro made history on the weekend. Amazing effort. You went to Puerto Rico. You beat the boogeyman. You beat corruption. You did it all, mate. You guys are on top of the world. Before we get to that moment, you had 6 weeks of training camp away from home, and you had 8 years before that. Take us through, mate. How did you meet Liam Paro? Where did this journey start?
I met him when he was early teens. My dad had a bit of involvement with him through the amateurs, and I met him very early on. At that point, he was still training with Dennis Clancy in Townsville, who's a champion coach in his own right. He's done a lot of good stuff up with in North Queensland with a lot of these young boys, and obviously they get to a point where they need to make the transition down south to Brisbane, and that's what happened with Liam. And he continued in the amateurs for a while. He trained with some guys down here, and when he decided to turn pro, I started looking after him at a mate's gym in Brisbane. And he and I were there for his first and second fight, I believe. And then, we continued on at another gym just ourselves. So, that was, just looking at it now, he turned pro in March. March, it was 2016, I think. So it's been just over 8 years together.
Wow. And then you met, you had the 8 years, and then take us back. You had training camp 6 weeks ago. You got the fight. You had to put the team together. And you had to go to a whole new country, set up training camp. I'm sure there was a few obstacles behind the scenes. Take us through, mate.
We had after the Montana fight. It was obviously an unbelievable performance by Liam after over a year layoff since the Brock fight, and we were pushing really hard for a big fight. And the Matias fight came about. And there were some negotiations for a while. It got to a point where there was a few sticking points, and it sort of went quiet for about a month and then livened back up again, and we were able to come to terms that were palatable to us. And once we got, once it was all signed off and stuff like that, we started our camp in Brisbane about 13 weeks before the fight. And we started obviously training for a couple of weeks initially, and then worked into some sparring here with some champion blokes here in Australia. In particular, our main one here was Dan Hill. Did a lot of work with Dan Hill, who's obviously was very important to get the right type of sparring for for the Matias fight, who's renowned as being probably the most active pressure fighter in boxing at the moment, relentless with his style and punch volume. And Dan Hill fit the bill for that. He's an unbelievable fighter and doing really big things in the super welterweight division. So we did a lot of rounds with him. We also flew in. We also had Kenny Aitken as well, really good welterweight kid out of the NTG gym, trained by Caleb Gray. We did some rounds with him, and also flew in Hass Hamden, Charlie Kazi as well. So we were really blessed with some great sparring in Australia. We did about a block of 6-7 weeks here. And then during that time, I was obviously setting up what we're going to be doing in Florida for our training camp and working out sparring partners over there, which ended up being an unbelievable camp. Also, one sparring partner that we did a little bit with beforehand, and he was probably the most influential sparring partner that we had, and continued sparring him in Florida as well and brought him with us, was Jason Fawcett. I can't say enough about the kid, man. Like, he was monumental in our sparring preparation for Matias. I have a really good relationship with his trainer, Joel Keegan, and after I think he come down a couple of separate times from Sydney for the weekend to sort of do some sparring, and I just saw that stylistically he was perfect for what we needed. And Joel was very kind. Joel and baby Peter were kind enough to entrust us having Jason with us for the 6 weeks over there. And I think they did about 100 rounds, to 80 to 90 or 100 rounds in the end. And
is Jason a southpaw?
No, he's orthodox. The kid is absolutely world class. I can't say that enough about him. I don't think, like, in sparring, I mean, he gives Liam some of his most competitive rounds, and he was a really key part to executing on the game plan and having that opponent in front of you to sort of simulate what we're going to be experiencing on fight night. So big shout out to Jason, Joel Keegan, and baby Peter for giving us the ability to use him in this prep.
Wow, there you go. Puerto Rico, Miami. What was that experience like? I mean, there's spies everywhere in this.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to get intel and so on and so on.
Yeah.
Do you have any interesting stories?
I mean, to be honest, the main thing that was driving me, initially we were looking at Miami, but it's just too commercialized for my liking. There was a lot of gyms that we were talking to, but just way too many people around. And we started looking at Fort Lauderdale, and then eventually Delray Beach Boxing Club popped up through a contact.
Beautiful place there.
Man, it was one of the few places in Florida that had a 20-foot boxing ring, which is what we were fighting in on the night, which was super important to the preparation. And Joe from Delray Boxing, unbelievable guy, man, just give us full access to the gym whenever we wanted. We had a key to the gym. One of the key things that we did during this preparation was when we found out Liam was going to be walking out so late. He walked out, I don't know, circa 11 p.m. in Puerto Rico. All of our training was done between 9:30 and 11:30 p.m. every single night. The only thing that we did during the day was Saturday morning. We either did swimming or sprint sessions or a beach session in in Fort Lauderdale Beach. But otherwise, every single training session was done very late in the evening. And we would, go to sleep, right? Because every day was about a 40-minute drive to get to Delray from Fort Lauderdale. So we had it was a good little chance to sort of talk shit in the car on the way home and there. But we had 100 kilometers a round trip every day, training wise. And we were going to bed at sort of 1 p.m. and sort of waking up that little bit later. And I think that really had a big impact as well, because Liam was just jumping out of his skin at the back on fight night. He was really energized. And I put that down a lot to the timing of the training.
Yeah, good on you, mate. That sounds like a fantastic lead up. Also, were there any security concerns for you guys training so late at night and driving round trip at 100 Ks at midnight?
No, I did 90% of the driving. Liam can actually drive pretty well in the US, but no, we were pretty good, man. Like we had a team when we had about 2 or 3 weeks to go. Hass Hamden and Justin Frost came over, so we had a good little crew. And Fort Lauderdale and Delray Beach, they're really nice places, to be honest. And We had no issue driving. The gym was, super tight in terms of security. We're in and out pretty quickly, and no, it was a beautiful place, and I'd do it all again. I just Delray Beach was the boxing club was unbelievable.
And then, so how many days prior to the fight did you leave Fort Lauderdale for Puerto Rico?
So we left Fort Lauderdale. We flew out of Miami on the Tuesday of fight week. So we flew in the morning. I just wanted to. The climate in Miami and Fort Lauderdale was very similar to Puerto Rico, and I just wanted to spend as little time as we needed to in Puerto Rico. To be honest, just keep Liam away from her. We had a nice, really nice Airbnb in Fort Lauderdale, and I just think that it was all working really well there. There was no need to sort of get in early. Stay out of enemy territory for as long as possible.
Well, are you forecasting that, Team Matias might sort of spike the water or watch you spar?
Yeah,
or
we only drank bottled water, mate. Yeah, no, look, to be honest, man, the people of Puerto Rico were unbelievable. Everybody was talking to us, it's dangerous, this, and that. Man, that's sort of water off a duck's back. You know what I mean? We're not disrespectful people. We never were going in there to disrespect Matias, his trainer, his team, the people. We embraced all of that energy, to be honest. And there's nothing, if you don't disrespect people, there's nothing to be worried about. Obviously, it was a Matchroom show, so they're a global corporation with, they got the runs on the board. They know what they're doing, and never once did we feel like it was an issue. Never.
Now, we want to get to the cut and thrust of this interview,
Mm-hmm.
not only to talk about you and your successes, but also Liam in Puerto Rico. Take us inside the boxing ring on that night.
Man, roller coaster, to be honest. It was like we had a plan that we worked to for 12 weeks, and every session was focused on doing things to assist Liam on the night. Like a lot of what we did in the lead up. Obviously, we knew a lot of the time was going to be spent on the back foot in this fight, but we always knew that Liam would need to have his pockets of being aggressive too, because you can't go backwards forever. So we did a lot of training focused on Liam moving backwards with, weights on his legs, in the sand, moving backwards, sprinting up hills backwards. Like we did so much focused on activating his hamstrings, because we knew that it was going to be so important in this fight for him to move backwards for longer periods than he probably did what he did in the Montana fight or the Brock fight, for that matter. So it was a very focused effort on that. But look, in terms of the night, Liam in the change room, Liam was focused, man. He was just ready to fight. We pulled up training pretty early and sparring as well, just because I felt that he was just about to peak and there was no need to do much more. So I pulled him up pretty early from sparring, 10, 11 days out before the fight, which most people sort of bring it up to a week out. But I pulled him up. I knew he was firing. There was nothing more to do. Weight's always good with him. He's never an issue with weight. He's a true professional. And it was all really just a big plan that sort of was executed perfectly on the night. But, it was a roller coaster too, don't get me wrong. So, I mean, the first rounds, obviously, I think Liam banked the first 5 rounds. I really, it might have been a close one in there somewhere, but I felt he was 5-zip going into the 6th. Obviously, hit a little bit of adversity in the 6th round and come back. He got caught. He never, like as I said earlier, he never got hurt. But it was the pace of the fight was very fast.
Yeah,
we've got some CompuBox stats. So as you know, everybody said in the world said that there was no one in the world that brings the pressure and the punch volume that Matisse does in a fight. Okay, so he's upwards of 100 punches around guy every round. And that's statistics say that. Liam, if I'm honest, is maybe a 50-60 punch around guy, in the past, because he's a very considered guy. Obviously loves to counter punch. He's a bit more, takes his time a little bit. We knew that wasn't going to happen in this fight, and hence the reason why we trained the way we did. But if you have a look at the CompuBox stats that issued after the fight, Liam in the first round threw 134 punches,
Wow.
And for an average of about low to mid 90s. So somewhere 92 to 95, don't quote me, but somewhere in the 90s per round is what he averaged in punch output. Matias was in the 50s. So Liam doubled what he usually does and Matias halved what he usually does. So that gives you an idea of where the game plan was at to keep turning him around. Like I always said to Liam in the prep, I think, he's unbelievable at mid-range, but you keep turning him around, he's sort of got canoes for feet. He really needs to settle. And that was what we did. We just I told Liam, a lot of the guys that I'd seen, great southpaws like Ergashev, Jukambayev, really, really good fighters, but I think they expended too much energy early trying to knock him out, loading up on big shots. I said, I think Liam needed to hit him hard to get his respect, but I also was very focused on punch output and taking points away. So, everybody sort of said that, from in the early stages of the fight, Liam wasn't really sitting real hard on punches unless he really saw an opportunity to do so. It was more about raking up points and, hitting at 3/4 pace. And I really think that was key to this fight because Liam never emptied the gas tank. And in fact, he was the one that come over the top of Matias in rounds 10, 11, and 12. The guy that everybody said couldn't be outworked, and Liam did it.
Wow. What do you see at the end of the 6th round? That you have a speech that's gone viral online. What did you see in Liam that sort of brought that out of you? Because off camera, you said to us you didn't even realize that you spoke the way you spoke.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not usually one to swear that much, but in like I said, when you're in the fire pit, and that's just pure raw emotion, and I've got a real close relationship with the kid. It's not just a trainer-fighter relationship; that there's more there. And I even said it in a post that I did. I know his pressure points. I know the things that get him up, and there were several times during the fight, though, in that 6th round, I could see that he was obviously tired. I mean, Matias was tired as well. But I always said during the preparation, you were going to probably experience maybe 1, 2, or 3 times during this fight where you're out on your feet and energy-wise, and you need to come out the other side. And the only way to do that is to dig deep. And that's what I kept I tried not to give him too many technical messages in that. It was all about giving him the uprising that he needed to know. So the key messages were obviously just to get his breathing under control, because I knew it was a very high output round where Matias had his best moments. So that was the messaging. The other messaging was to let him know that he was ahead. When you tell someone, hey, I'm way ahead on the cards, I think it just gives you that extra leg that, man, I can do this. And the other thing I really wanted to say to him is, don't give him an opportunity to trade. Like, we've done it all camp. Like, he was sparring Jason Fawcett and Pedro Campa, who, is a world championship opponent in his own right when he fought Teofimo Lopez. So I had those two guys coming in fresh, coming at Liam for 12 rounds. I know what he can do. And he was tired in sparring too, but the way he come out the other side is what I always knew he could do and what we saw the whole preparation. And that was all I was really focused on in that 6th round, getting that messaging across that I believed in him. I knew what he could do, and he just needed to keep believing in himself.
Wow. What adversity did you face in Puerto Rico? We hear all these rumors about they have all these little dirty tricks and, little moves.
I wouldn't say adversity. I think just like we spent during negotiations, obviously it was very important to secure certain things, and being in his backyard, we wanted to have a balanced panel of judges, which was negotiated and agreed upon. So we had an Australian, a Puerto Rican, and an American judge. But when we got the panel of officials, there was a Puerto Rican referee, which I was very upset about. And we made a number of objections to that, strong objections, because we pulled out history in the last 5 IBF world title fights. There has never, ever been a referee of the same nationality of either contender. Never. So all we were asking for was something that had been history. So why they're so close to America, Puerto Rico. It's a 2-hour flight to bring someone over from America. Why wouldn't you do that? But look, it ended up where it did, and my understanding is the Puerto Rican Commission was very strong on that and said, no, we make the recommendation, or we make the appointment of the referee, and we were promised that he was one of the best referees in the world, which, to be honest, I know Luis Pabon, and he is a great referee, but I was just concerned about one of the guys fighting is the countryman, and I think even if it's just subconsciously, there might be something there where, you know, it might become something during the fight. And I think every man and his dog saw that happened on fight night.
It did.
Liam was, you know, he was warned very heavily early for hitting at the back of the head when Matias was doing exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you watched the video, whenever the two boys came together, he would shove Liam back 3-4 meters and let Matias just walk on forward to try and get Matias rolling on the front foot. He was very aggressive in the corner. I think it was about the 4th round, because I think he took points off in the 7th or something like that. But
in the middle somewhere. Yeah,
he came somewhere in, I can't remember exactly, but very aggressively into Liam and said, "You need to respect me." And I'm like, mate, you're not looking at this both ways. Obviously, I didn't want to take away from my 1 minute with Liam, so I tried to fob him off, but I wanted him to know. I said, hey, look, you're not looking at this both ways. And by the way, Matias is using his forearm a lot, and he hasn't got one warning. But I just felt that he was trying to take my 1 minute of time with Liam, and I didn't want that to happen. So I tried not to make too big of a deal out of it. I didn't want Liam to think I'd lost my cool with the referee and wasn't focused on what he needed to do to win the fight. So I tried to downplay it as much as I could, but it was a serious issue, and I think that the way people have reacted to it online is justified.
Were you happy with the commentators?
I think so. I mean, like, I haven't, the commentary is the commentary, but I heard that Chris Mannix and Sergio Mora were very sort of had an issue with the referee as well, and the way he sort of made himself the third man in the ring. He really sort of didn't let the two boys just flow. I mean, he was noticeable in that ring that night, and that's not what a referee's meant to be. They're meant to blend into the background and not make it the referee show. And I feel like, for whatever reason, I don't know, I'm not saying he's biased or whatever, but subconsciously, I think there was something there where, you know, potentially the fight was trying to be changed.
Okay, so now we want to get inside your head for the last 13 seconds of the 12th round. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the bell goes, and then the commentator or the ring announcer says, all three judges. Now, your turn.
When I heard look, I think Liam won 9 rounds to 3, is my view. That's how I scored it on fight night. And obviously we lost a point. So I had a 116, 111 card is what I honestly, truly believe. And that's trying to be as fair as possible. When I heard 115, 112 by 2, I got a little bit...
Did you shit yourself?
I got a little bit scared because I'm like, man, that's probably... too. I don't know. Like, obviously, Matias's corner had their hands up. They were... there's no way he won the fight, but I'm like, oh, fuck, it's, I thought it was a little bit wider than that. Some guys had it 10 rounds to 2. Even Eddie sort of said after the fight, he's lucky to give Matias a couple of rounds. But when I heard the 116, 111, I knew we had it. That's when he announced that third card. If he had said 115, 113 or something like that, it would have been the hardest 10 seconds of my life, I think. But that 116, 111, I knew deep down we had it in the bag. And those words that I remember, it brought me back to George Kambosos when he beat Teofimo Lopez, and you could see, obviously, that was tight as well, and George had definitely won the fight, but being in Teo's backyard, and I remember seeing Jim's face and George's face, and it's like when you hear those words "and you," it's like it's all your dreams in one moment. It's just so raw, and that moment brought me back to when George won the world title in that moment, just the emotion you saw on his father's face. And I didn't see it on the night, but my dad's emotion too. Like, I've since gone back and seen footage of it, and it meant so much, like Liam from a little young battler from, just a great family, but from humble beginnings. And, in Mackay, just a little kid with a dream and taking on the world. And when you hear that, you've beat the big bad boogeyman that no one wanted to fight in his backyard so convincingly, man, you can't script it better, man.
This is as much a victory for Liam, even though he put the gloves on. I think this is as much a victory for Alfie Di Carlo as it is for Liam Paro.
I mean, it's all for me. It's always about in life. I never, and I've said this as well many of times, and people that know me well know this is true. I mean, I share a very special relationship with Liam. We've had little ups and downs along the way. 8 years, it's like a little marriage, to be honest. But the times that I've ever been hard on him, it's always because I saw something in him and I didn't want him to veer away from everything that he had. He's got God-given talent. Like there's some things that, it doesn't matter how much you train someone, whatever. He has God-given ability. And I just tried to bring out the best of him in that period. And I'd never really, it was never for the accolades for me, the personal accolades. It was always for Liam. I wanted him to be the best person he could be in life and become the best fighter he could be, because we all knew that he was, he's top of the tree when it comes to pound for pound fighters in Australia. I've always said that. But it's also something for me for Dad. I felt that it was kind of an injustice given how much he's done for Aussie boxing and 27, 28 years, whatever it is. And he never had a world champion. And I just think that he truly deserves that. And this one meant so much more, I think, because it's from the grassroots to the top of the mountain. Like it's from pro debut all the way through. We didn't pick him up at 15-0 or whatever. He was done from the start all the way to the top. And he is the number one guy at 140 now. When you take out the number one guy, you become the number one guy. And he's the number one pound for pound fighter in Australia as well. But we're just happy to be a part of that wave of great fighters. Obviously Jaya Patea, Tim Tszyu, George Kambosos, the Maloneys, and guys like that, man, us Aussies are so deserving when we get our chance and when we win. And I think we should be embraced by the whole country.
Now, you are deserving. We all know that. And we are known as being very good at celebrators. So what did you guys do in Puerto Rico post-fight?
To be honest, man, by the time we got out, like obviously the fight, we didn't finish out back until about, 1 o'clock-ish, because Liam had to do drug testing. And he had, I don't know if you guys saw, but he had like a cauliflower ear that was starting to get pretty big. So we went to the hospital. Liam, Tyler, which is Liam's partner, and Liam, we went to the hospital and we were there for, a couple of hours or something like that. So by the time we got back to the Airbnb, it was like 3 o'clock. We had our close little team. We went for a little bit to the fight hotel for about maybe an hour, like all with Dad and all the boys and everyone who travelled up, my brother and Liam's family. And we had a few beers, probably about, 3 or 4 beers. But then we went back to the house and we had to get up at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock to travel back to the airport. So the celebrations will be done in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks, mate. I'm going to have like a big sort of big party here with him out on a boat with, a lot of the people who have been good to us throughout this time. And, the celebrations are on hold, mate, until he gets back from the Bahamas.
No, we totally understand. I'm sure a lot of people will be eyeing off as to where you guys celebrate off the coast of Queensland. But is his ear okay? Did it affect his hearing, or is it just a vanity thing?
No, it was. Yeah, it was starting to get a bit big and full of blood. So I wanted the doctor to sort of drain it at the fights, but they didn't. Funnily enough, they didn't have a syringe. Doctor didn't have a syringe, so we went to the hospital, and the guy at the hospital said that it'd probably be best to leave it and just to ice it. So we waited a couple of hours just to hear that. But I've seen it. I speak to him 10 times a day, and it's healed in pretty well. But it got pretty big. Obviously, he was sort of getting hit on the side of the head, sort of rabbit punched a fair bit during that fight. So, but yeah, no long-term issues or anything like that. I think he did perforate his eardrum. It was in round 6. He told me he perforated his eardrum, but you can actually hear it when he says it. He goes, "I think I burst my ear," and I just kept talking over him like I'd never heard it. So he's got a big heart, man. The kid's got a big heart, and you can't teach that. You can have all the best training, best trainers, whatever. tickers, you're born with ticker. And he showed spades of it that night.
100%. What's next?
Man, we want to fight before the end of the year. Obviously, we're not ones to sort of sit around trying to be active. We've been sort of unfortunate to have periods where Liam's been injured over the last couple of years. So we don't want to sit around. We want to stay active. Want to be active champions, and we want a big fight next. Like this was a big fight, but I think we'd love a big fight here in Australia.
A rematch?
No, there's no rematch clause. So that was
that confident.
Hey,
that confident. They were that confident.
That was just something that we said. Look, there's no rematch clause. That's it. Simple as that.
I think Panda will be a little pissed off.
Well, I don't know. And I always said this. I've heard a couple of things being said since the fight about we didn't have a game plan, and those to be honest, Matias and Panda and their whole team were unbelievable. The sportsmanship he showed after the fight. We saw him at the fight hotel after. Pure, absolute gentleman. Panda's a gentleman, but I think to say that you didn't have a fight plan going into a huge fight, your homecoming, is a bit
arrogant.
Arrogant's probably the wrong word, but it's a little bit. I just don't think it needed to be said. There's no way you didn't have a fight plan going into the biggest fight of your life in front of all your people. I think it's a little bit dismissive of how serious you took it. For the first time, your homecoming, you're meant to be fighting for your people, and you don't come in with a game plan. I think that's sort of taking the shine off what Liam did. And I saw things that he said that he was sort of out at clubs fight week or something. I'm like, man, that's just bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, you're a professional. There is no way on God's earth that in your big homecoming fight in front of 10,000 screaming, what felt like 50,000 screaming Puerto Ricans, to be honest, there's no way you did that. So I just don't think I don't think it's fair to do that to Liam, and I don't think it's fair to do that to himself either, because it just does nothing for you. I don't think it's the right thing to be done. But another thing that really on the night, just talking about the Puerto Rican people, man, within 4 rounds, Liam had silenced that whole place.
And they were loud.
Quiet. Yeah, it went quiet very early.
When we walked out, it was like, obviously the one thing that sort of annoyed me a little bit about the whole Matias thing was the entry, his walkout. I didn't think it's not right. I wouldn't, champion or not, I would never ever do that to somebody. Like where, I just don't think it's respectful to keep another contender in there for, I don't know, man, it felt like 10 minutes, I just think it's bullshit, to be honest. It's just not the right thing to do. And that's one thing that's sort of a little bit upsetting about that whole thing. But to be honest, I was sort of looking at it thinking, man, this guy's used so much energy before he even gets into the ring. And I just felt that he was trying to embrace the energy in the room because, I don't know, maybe he had nerves of his own. I always said the whole time in the lead up, I said, man, we've had a big fight in front of Brock Jarvis, and the pressure of selling, the pressure of fighting in front of your people. I know what it's like. I know, because, we had an obligation to sell, and you got an obligation to perform. He had that same feeling, and I know what it's like, and you're only human, and he would have had those pressures on him. And I think that, I don't think he took us lightly, but I just think that we're able to get into his head a little bit in that. I was saying that consistently during fight week, that I think he's got a lot of pressure on him. I just really think that played a part as well. And just Liam's just no bullshit attitude. Like every face-off encounter that they had, Liam was just no shits given, and I think that sometimes Matias, I think he beats people before he steps into the ring, kind of like the old Mike Tyson factor, like I think that ever since he killed Dadashev, a lot of people, I feel like a lot of trainers potentially have finished fights prematurely because of that whole duty of care thing. And, am I taking this guy down the same path that Dadashev did and stuff like that? So I think that's a big reason. Obviously, he is a unbelievable pressure fighter, but I do think that he got this sort of big cult following because of his style of fighting. And yeah, you just got to try and get in and break that guy down, because he feeds off the fact that he's a bully, and he sort of, when you've got an Aussie guy in front of you who just does not give a shit, he's not intimidated by you at all, has every single guy in the 140 division has said no to the fight. And you've got this kid from Mackay, 24-0, doesn't give a shit who you are. He just gets in your face and he's ready to fight. I think there's something to be said about that as well.
Absolutely, mate. And it showed on fight night. He brought the fight and he took it all the way, mate. Even in those moments of adversity where we felt like Matias was coming on, you guys just shut him down and changed.
He definitely come on in those mid rounds, but Liam did a really good job of, clinching when he needed to. He did a great job of moving and jabbing and punching in pockets and closing down the fight. Like it was a masterful performance, to be honest. And that's the sweet science of boxing. That's using all the tools available to you to win a fight. And I feel like Liam did that. It is, to me, it's one of the greatest Australian sporting moments in history. To do what he didn't fight for a vacant title, like you said, Ahmed. He didn't fight a champion and, being able to get out of his own bed in the morning and fight. We traveled, we stayed away from home. We're in a very, boxing crazy country. It was, I wouldn't say it was hostility, but man, there was some energy in that place. And, to begin with. And when Liam started, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and he started banking those, man, he turned that crowd inside out. And Matias, you could see he started to, I think because he's always closed the gap and eventually got the person where he needed to get them. When he wasn't able to do that in round 6, 7, and 8 with Liam after having his best moments in round 6, he panicked.
Absolutely.
And played into Liam's hand of just letting him come on to shots, turning him around, closing when he needed to. Man, I can't speak enough about how proud I am of what Liam did on that night. I can talk as much as I want about what I want him to do. It means nothing if he doesn't go out and do it. And man, he'd listened to every single word of every sentence that I spoke that night.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, I mean, you guys, that clinch was used masterfully. Every time you think he's coming, boom, stops the momentum. Stops the momentum.
We got a bit of a call, like, dip and dive sort of thing. When you feel like you're back on the ropes, just dip and close, man. Dip and close and turn. And every time he did get close, he dipped and closed, or dipped, closed, and pushed off and started jabbing with his own punches, jabbing and mixing it up with his own series of punches, but never overcommitted on shots. That's why I think was the keys to victory. Ergashev, man, he hit Matias with some massive shots.
I watched that fight. Yeah.
Yeah, and St. Dukenbaev had really good moments too. Like he got stopped in round 8, but it's very hard to keep up the volume that you need to keep someone like Matias off and sitting on and loading every punch. You just can't do it. And we were very aware of that. And Liam knew that he had to hit him hard when he really saw something, but the majority of the time it was just peppering him with really good sort of snappy shots and keep turning him around because the guy needs to set, and that was very obvious on the night.
Wow. There you go. I mean, Alfie, mate, you've been absolutely amazing. Very generous with your time. It's been a great episode.
Guys like yourself supporting the sport, that's what we need, man. Like, the more eyes on the sport, the better it is. Like, our dream is to bring a big fight here to Australia, and the only way for these kids to get, obviously, mainstream media has its limitations, unfortunately, and with outlets like yourself pushing names out there, that's how you get these kids known. And it wouldn't be the same without guys like yourself and Noonan Boy as well, and guys like that, man. We give all our time as much as we can to guys like you, and because you're the glue that holds the sport together.
Thank you, Alfie.
Thank you very much, Alfie. Before we wrap things up, Tony, do you have any parting questions?
Yes, I do. Alfie, I've got the best one saved for last.
Yep.
We know Matias is known as the boogeyman. What's he known as now?
I don't know, man. I still think the guy's a killer. Don't get me wrong, but he's I don't know. I was thinking this is what I was thinking, because like Liam has always been known as the prodigy, right? But when you're a champion, you're no longer a prodigy. So I'm like, what's Liam going to be known as now? The boogeyman killer, or what is he? What's his new name? I don't know. Like, it's something we need to think about as a team. But look, I still think Matias has got a lot to give to the sport, man. Like, just because like it's like anybody. You can have a loss that you're not defined by a loss. And we saw that in Matias, 6 fights ago or whatever it was, where, he had a performance and in that fight, he got out hustled at his own game in terms of the front. But you're not defined by a loss. The beautiful thing about boxing, I think, is that people are starting to take risks, whether that's because of Saudi money or whatever. I just think that the sport is better off. The sport is in a better place when the best are fighting the best. And I know Liam's not scared of fighting any man. And obviously it needs to be something in our next fight where it's something big. I think Liam deserves it. He's been a road warrior. He's fought on the road, away from everybody. We've obviously had that one fight with Brock, which was amazing. But I just think that it's time for him to have his moment, his homecoming. And we're hoping to sort something out with Matchroom and bring a big name here towards the end of the year.
Well, one more quick one, if you don't mind, you telling all of our fans and your fans on this fantastic podcast, when is Liam Paro back in Australia? And if you are willing to divulge his flight details, can they go to the airport and welcome him back?
Yeah, definitely. He gets back on the evening of the 28th of June, Friday the 28th of June. I don't know the flight detail, the actual flight number, but it's on the evening. I know we're trying to do a bit of a hero's welcome for him. That the time is proving a little bit difficult in terms of media and stuff because it is a Friday night. I can't remember the exact time, but we might be trying to shift his flight to earlier in the day to try and give more people the opportunity to come.
And hopefully the Queensland government can get there.
Well, man, I just think there's, the kid's done something. He's done the impossible. Seemingly the impossible from, what most people thought about this fight. You even look at the odds, man. I had so many mates that made so much money. But I never, it's one thing that I never sort of get involved. I knew Liam was very juicy odds, man, but I stay away from all that. But I had a lot of friends who made a lot of money that night.
Any case studies?
Hey?
Any case studies?
No, but he was playing, I think 7-1 on at one point. I think it was like $1.15 or something like that. He was, well, people didn't give us a chance, but it doesn't matter what people think, man. It's only mattered what Liam and his team thought. He's got an unbelievable promotional team around him. My dad and Brian Peters and a training team. And he's got a great family, his father and mother and his sister and his partner, Tyler. They're the ones that keep him grounded, man. And he's very lucky to have the people that he does in his life because he's been able to chase greatness and achieve greatness with that backing and support. So hopefully Australia can get behind him, man, now that he's, I think that it was his, the George Kambosos moment. I think that was a defining moment in his career and he was able to bring some big fights back here and trying to do the same thing. I think both of those guys, man, sort of went under the radar a bit, didn't have the beauty of the big media getting behind them, and even Jaya Patea to a degree. Like these are the kids, man, that have done it really the hard way, and I think they're deserving now that they're at the top to get their shot and they show the world what they've got and earn a good quid while they're at it.
Well, let's go Australia. Tune in. Hopefully, when we find out the next big one, we have a massive crowd, a massive fight.
I'll give you details, Ahmed, about when I know, once we finalise exactly when he's going to land, and we might be changing that. So, if you want to get that out to your
we'll
people.
Put it on all our socials. Yeah.
So I'll sort of, in the next couple of days, we should know that. But he's tucked away in the Bahamas at the moment, having some downtime with his missus. So I bet
she's tucked away.
Good on him.
I still hear from him 10 times a day though. We speak all the time, and it's a moment that it's still sinking in. To be honest, it's really still sinking in.
I think it's going to get better as time goes on, mate. I think
the gravity of what he did is second to none, man.
So thanks for joining us on Raw Sport.
Absolutely.
Always. Like I said, thank you for what you do for the sport, man, and thank you for the ability to give my piece about the fight and hopefully get the whole of a nation behind this kid.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Alfie Di Carlo, thank you very much for joining us on Raw Sport. Take care, everyone. We'll catch you on the next